third person to teach them language and to help them walk and not hurt themselves, and tell them about tools and instruments and what is fear and
I'm Janine Ramirez, People First Advocate at Erudit, and today I'm so happy to be with our very own Ricardo Michelle Reyes, or Rick, to peek into the world of AI from the lens of the not so data and tech savvy. So, Rick is a co founder and the current chief science officer at Erudite, but I love talking to Rick because he has his hands on so many things AI and tech. So he learned software development at age 8. He built his first downloadable app at 14 years old. He was a member of the IA or AI 2030 MX or Mexico coalition, where they provided policy recommendations to the Mexican government and for the banking and finance industry as well to shape laws and policies on AI. And he even worked with the European Space Agency. Woo! That's just the tip of the iceberg. So I wanted to have a quick conversation with Rick to dig into the AI trend for HR. And yeah, thank you so much for your time today, Rick. Welcome.
for all the good vibes in the morning.
It's kind of it's kind of odd, right? Like usually we're on a Google Meet and now we're recording a
Yeah,
conversation, but thank you for doing this experiment with
it's
me.
still very fun.
Okay. So to kick us off, I just wanted to ask like a favor because I know you do this a lot. You've done this a million times, but can you explain and describe what AI and machine learning is for people that aren't familiar with the technology? So how would you introduce it to someone for the first time?
Sure. I think the easiest way is to see what it isn't. So,
Okay.
for example, if you use software like regular software, for example, Word, which is no longer going to be true because now they're launching their Copilot functionality, where
Right.
Word is going to change a lot. But Word before AI, it wouldn't gain any new features or any different ways to do things when you interacted with it, right? So regular software, non-AI software, is when we have the answers on how to do something. So let's
Mm-hmm.
say you want to print something on a printer, you write an algorithm and then you put the document and it prints, right? So when there's a well-established formula or a well-established set of steps on what to do to achieve something, that is what traditional software is for. And then you have very skilled programmers that would write this code for you, and you'll get your software. But the software won't change with experience, won't change with the interaction with the user. It will only
Mm-hmm.
do what it was programmed for to do. Um,
You have to manually like
yeah,
upgrade,
exactly.
right?
You need to have a programmer to do changes if you want anything new. AI is different because it's for the things we don't have answers for. So, for example, I don't know any programmer that can write software to distinguish a dog from a cat just using programming, right? So normally what it's done there is that you collect 100 images of dogs and 100 images of cats, and then you program an algorithm that is a learning algorithm, a machine learning algorithm. And this algorithm is general purpose. Like it can learn any sort of thing you have data for, and also like the right answer, right? So it changes. For example, if you are writing traditional software, then you, for example, the Celsius versus Fahrenheit conversion. So you have a number of degrees in Celsius. There's a formula to calculate in Fahrenheit. You
Yeah.
code this formula, you put the number, and you get an answer. So you know all of the steps. In the dogs versus cats, you don't know how to write the code. Like what do you recognize? Like the form of the ears. Like even writing a program to detect ears would be very difficult using traditional programming. So here, what you do is like you take your data, you take your correct labels from human experience, and then the algorithm would try to learn the function, would try to learn the program to achieve the goal you're trying to achieve. And to so what you program is a very general algorithm that its function is to be able to approximate any other function. So let's say this is a code you write to be able for the computer to identify what is what you're trying to achieve by comparing its results to the thing that you gave it, right? So then
Yeah.
you would run one of the images through the algorithm, and at the beginning it would be random. Like it will say, "Oh, it's cat," and then using something called a loss function or a cost function, you will score how wrong is this model, and then use a
Mm-hmm.
different algorithm called backpropagation to update the model and give another try to make prediction. So then you give cats, it will say, oh, it's cat. You'll say, okay, this is correct. And then from the mistakes it's making, you update the model and you start making predictions again until you are satisfied with the predictions it makes. Uh, so there are a lot of ways to score how good a model is, but it depends a lot on the industry. For some people, having 80% accuracy on a task is more than enough. If you're working in cancer detection, maybe you want to have 95%, 98%
Yeah.
accuracy. So depending on the industry, what is a good model, the definition of a good model changes. And every like the algorithm is the same for any industry. What changes is the data and the way you label it.
And maybe that's what makes it a little bit scary for some people, because it's like, one, it learns. So it's more similar to a human than the typical, software that's really dependent on the programmer. So it's learning. And then also, like, in the beginning, I'm guessing it's not effective, it's not efficient, doesn't give you like the right insights, right? Like, it has to be trained.
Yeah, it still depends. So that is, for example, what happens with ChatGPT, right? Which is the most scary, let's say,
Mm-hmm.
thing that is happening nowadays. Um, and it's because there's this thought experiment called the Chinese room, right? That is, you have this room where you have a person with a dictionary of how to take text in English and then say the same thing in Chinese. Right? And then the experiment is like you enter text to this room, and then you don't know what's happening inside, and then it returns you something in Chinese. And the question that we always make is, does the person inside of the box know Chinese? Like, is it conscious of the Chinese translation, or it's just repeating a mechanical thing that looks like it knows
Right.
Chinese, but doesn't mean that it actually knows Chinese?
Right.
Because there's you can do this with a person, right? You tell a person 5 words in Spanish, but that doesn't mean they understand Spanish. They don't just know that when they need to achieve something, they have to emit that sound, but they don't have the
Mm-hmm.
culture, the context. Like with large language
Right.
models, we are still questioning how much the model really understands what is happening,
Mm-hmm.
because that would be anthropomorphizing or giving human characteristics to a formula, to a mathematical formula, right? Like, so if you look
Right.
how
Right.
something works from the inside, but then a lot of people make the argument of like, oh, but neurons are also like that. Like neurons are just, there's a stimuli and then they collect like enough energy or enough signal to like fire themselves, and then you feel something, right? So there are a lot of people who are very reductionist and say like, oh, why would natural neurons be different from AI neurons, right? Like and
Yeah.
there's this kind of people who think humans are machines, and that humans just are pursuing pleasure and avoiding pain, and that's all the human experience. But I mean, probably these people haven't experienced dancing or singing or falling in love or having being anxious about an exam. There are a lot of other features that, let's say, are a layer on top of what natural neurons do. Right? So we are still, for example, AI doesn't have desire still, like it cannot
Yeah.
uh,
You always mention
prompt itself, like the
it won't give its own,
prompt.
yeah, it won't give its own objective.
Yeah, so that's the thing with ChatGPT.
But this is why I love talking to you, Rick. Like you have this romantic side that know, it's like you work in AI, but you have this romantic side in you
Yeah,
that it's like learning AI, or the more I learn about AI, the more I also learn about
of
humanity.
course.
In a way, it's like it makes you reflect on, okay, so what makes us human, like why are we different,
Yeah,
and then when you say these things, like, yeah, they don't have desire. It's like they can, you give them a prompt and they'll do it because they're trained to do it, and they have all the formulas and algorithms behind it to figure it out. But it can't be like, I want to, I don't know, like solve whatever, and they're gonna do it themselves,
yeah.
right? But like that's the fear. Is that ever going to happen, right? Like is that programmable desire?
But yeah, it's complicated because we don't know about humans themselves. These kinds of questions. For example, there's a very common test for
Hmm.
consciousness that is being able to recognize yourself in the mirror. Like so, there are different animals who have different levels of consciousness. And for example, if you ever had a dog as a puppy, uh, they would bark at the mirror because they don't know
Right.
that it's not a different dog who they are barking at, right? So they would spend a lot of time and sometimes crash against the mirror because they don't recognize themselves. There are some dogs
Right.
who do, some races of dogs like collies, Shiba Inus, that are able to achieve these feats. Um, then babies, for example, at the beginning, they cannot recognize themselves either. And then something happens when they grow and with experience that they start knowing that the person there is themselves, right? So this is one of the kind of features we should achieve with AI to be able to reach these kinds of objectives. Um, and also the question is why? Like, why do we want machines to have the same characteristics as humans? Right?
No, we don't. I think I want to know, like, if it's possible, just to have an answer of no, it's not possible, just so it's not as scary. No, but you have these like stories of AI saying that like they're in love with someone and they want to be with someone. And like that to me is, desire. But what is that, just words? That's like there's no feeling behind it, I'm
So
guessing.
there's a very important part about human experience that is embodiment. Like the experience of having hands and eyes and ears and legs and exploring the world. You could simulate this in an AI, right? Like you can make, right now there's this technology called neural radiant fields, where you
Hmm.
can scan. There is this experiment that Google made where they scanned all of San Francisco with a Waymo car, one of these autonomous cars, and then they created a pixel perfect simulation of San Francisco on a determined day that is that a Waymo can navigate. And you could also release, or let's say the Waymo itself, the artificial intelligence inside of this car has the experience of embodiment of being a car, and then is navigating a world, and it's sensing things with the radars and with the cameras, and it's performing actions with the wheels. So this is a fully embodied artificial intelligence that, one, it cannot distinguish if it's inside of a simulation or it's in the real world, right? Or can it?
Okay,
Like
yeah.
one of the questions would be,
Or for it doesn't matter. Like
yeah,
it doesn't know what, like that there's a real world and there's like another type of simulation.
there is something going on inside of humans that is like this just to use GPT vocabulary, right? Like when you write something into GPT and it gives you an answer, the thing you write is called a prompt, right? So
Mhm.
let's say, could could algorithms self-prompt themselves at some point? That is like one of the questions of this year, right? Like, could we put just one GPT with another GPT and then make them prompt each other? But there has to be like a starting point, right? Or there has to be some code to achieve
Mm.
this one prompting each other.
Yeah, before it
So
happens.
you could say AI is in the stage of a baby right now, right? A baby needs a third person to teach them language and to help them walk and not hurt themselves, and tell them about tools and instruments, and what is fear and what is love and what is justice and what is God and what is peace and what is war and what is.
Oh
Yeah.
my gosh, AI is humanity's baby, right?
That would be
I don't want to go through like the adolescence of AI. Like that's
that is a very good summary. AI is humanity's baby. Yes.
but in one of our conversations, you mentioned something to me that stuck. You were saying that like it's more the human element of AI that is unsure now. Like the debate of how should we be using AI, like how should we be developing AI. And it's really more that versus I don't know, I guess like what AI is like fixed.
Yeah.
That is kind of the debate. So can you elaborate on that? Like how's that going? How's that debate going?
Uh, it's hard because uh, the same happens again, using the same baby analogy, right? Like, to be able to kill someone, it's like, what is natural, to kill people or not to kill people, right? There are
Mhm.
a lot of people researching anthropology, um, and checking how was the state of nature before, let's say, air quotes, civilization, right? Like before
Mhm.
agriculture, before like monarchy, before all the creation of the state and the police and all these things. How did people live? Um, and if you have watched Game of Thrones, for example, it seems like it was a world where it was normal to kill someone, right? It was almost expected of
Yeah.
you to, like, oh, you see someone stealing your apples and these are your apples, so then you cut these people. So, for example,
Mm.
would AI develop private property, a sense of private property? Like, I'm not your computer. The computer is my body, right? And why are you touching my keys? Like,
Yeah. I'm so sorry.
yeah.
You know?
So there are so many things happening inside of human brains that, yeah, when you're able to ask a question to ChatGPT and it answers something very clever, it's like, oh my god, AI is so advanced. But then,
Mm.
just walking, just how many uh, months or years takes for a baby to be able to stand against gravity? Because, like, we all humans are experiencing gravity all the time. Like, there's this force just pulling us towards Earth all the time, and you have to be really, really like zen and conscious and do meditation and stuff to try to pinpoint exactly where in your body is that gravity is pulling you in, right? There has to be some part of your body where gravity is making the most action, and
Mhm.
we ignore that most of the time. But babies feel it all the
Yeah.
time.
We don't even think
Yeah,
about it.
exactly. They try to stand up, and the gravity, boom, pulls them, and the experience of gravity is something we very quickly forget. Like, oh, one time we didn't know how to stand up. There was a point of our lives where standing up was our biggest challenge, and then we managed to stand up without leaning towards any kind of furniture. And then we learn how to control our limbs and how to stand straight and how to coordinate arms with legs. And this is all the work of Boston Robotics, for example, and other big labs. There's a lot of research on just the embodiment of AIs and the motor control of AIs. And there has been 40 years of research on how to walk, you know? And how to plan navigation and how to use your eyes to map the world and then create a navigation strategy. But all of this requires a goal, right? So
Yeah.
if you observe cats or dogs, there's some reason you could be reductionist and say they walk because they're looking for water or because they're looking for food, but they know where the water and the food is. So a lot of the times they just look for a spot that is not too cold, not too hot, and just lay there and do nothing, right? And humans could do the same. Like a lot of like getting a job. Humans are so abstracted away from the experience of the real world, like because we work in things that involve only symbols, right? Like programming, for example,
Hmm.
is creating symbols to operate other symbols like money or like, buying tickets, or that some of them correspond to something in reality, but there are things
Right.
that never touch reality, like the stock market or like
Yeah.
cryptocurrencies or all these things that are purely virtual.
I was I was thinking about that the other day because where I'm living in San Sebastian, people are so in touch with nature. Like they're always out. Like I know people that are afraid of the computer. Like they ask me like, "Can you help me with this?" Because they're like they panic when they have to use the computer, go into like Google Business and update something. And I'm like, it's crazy how as humans we have our own like world too. Like there are people that are just, on the screen all the time and not out in the real world.
Yeah.
So it's like even within humanity, I guess there are people that are more, I don't know, in another world, right? Than the rest that are outside going for a walk in the mountains or something. Okay. I wanted to go into some of the topics that we discussed in previous Shockwave talks because I feel like you would have like an interesting perspective on it in terms of AI. So we like in the past we talked about like trust building in organizations, like diversity and all that. Like let's go into trust for a bit. Like how do you think or do you think it's even possible for humanity and AI to build trust? Because now like there's so much fear. There are people that are all for AI, there are people that aren't. Like what do you think that trust building process is like for humans and AI?
Education, definitely education. Because one of the things that GPT is gonna bring as good to humanity. So of course, a lot of jobs will be replaced, but there's also if good people put their hands to this and research and establish NGOs, or if government people or startups like social entrepreneurship, you can use GPT to make training easy and more personalized and more scalable for like both professional training and just regular elementary school training. So
Hmm.
the fear of AI comes exactly from the same part that all of the fears of humanity have come from, right? So we used to explain everything with gods, right? Like in the beginnings of humanity, it was like, why is there thunder? Oh, because there's this god that throws thunder from
Yeah.
the sky, right? Why does it rain? Oh, because there's this god that makes the rain. Why does water flow? Oh, because there's this god of water that makes everything flow. Why is there sun? Oh, because there's this god of sun that. So everything was
Yeah.
explained with gods. And as we started researching, like experiencing things, like there had to be someone who had the courage to experience it, not just right.
Mhm.
So
And to kind of go to the why, right?
yeah, the
Behind it.
scientific endeavor is very scary because so let's imagine you're a Greek person and they tell you all of the gods live on Mount Olympus. There had to be
Mhm.
someone who went to
Climb.
actually made their life choice and their life path to find a way, because now we have, these hammers and ropes and all of these things, but in Greece you would have to buy that from one person in Egypt. It was not as
There was no
easy.
Amazon.
No, it was not.
Yeah.
So you would have to find a way to get all of the equipment, which would take a lot of time, and then you have to have enough food because there were no fridges. Because uh,
Mm.
you know that if you were to climb that mount, you would have to have enough food that wouldn't rot. There would have to be so much preparation,
Yeah, there's so much that you had to
yeah,
do to
just to climb there.
kind of discover or reach.
And then you would
Not
see
to
it,
live
right?
on.
You would see it and say, "There's nothing. Like there's nothing there."
They're not
Yeah,
here, guys. They're not
and
here.
then have to go back and tell people this, and
And explain,
all
yeah.
the
And be the crazy
rejection.
one, no?
Yeah, all the rejection. But no, I went
Mm.
and I saw it. What proof do you have? Or you can always use the argument of, "Oh, but they live in another realm that is not observable by human eyes," right? Um, and then you would have to resist all this rejection and try to not get killed. Or you was just shut
Yeah.
up to yourself and maybe make like a secondary cult where everyone knew what was in Mount Olympus, and or you would have to negotiate with the government. It also depends on your strategy, right? What do you want to do with that
Mm.
knowledge? And it's the same thing now. Like there are people who have knowledge on how to do very large language models and train them to do things like GPT. And then that's the question. What is the strategy of these people towards humanity? Are there people who want to make humanity a better place? Are there people who want to buy their thousand Bugatti? Uh, are there people who want to make a larger yacht? Are they people who have some kind of misanthropy against humans and want to the humanity to finish? Uh, are we gonna have a new Hitler that uses
Yeah.
AI? Like,
So I guess it's like, I don't know, building trust in AI or finding trust for AI is really finding trust for the people behind it,
there's that,
that created it, that trained it, like the company behind
yeah,
it, like are they, it's true, because I guess, yeah, it's our
yeah,
baby, right? Or each company has their baby AI, and they can kind of develop it in the way that they want.
yeah. Do we trust
Um
OpenAI? Do we trust Google? Do we trust Microsoft?
right.
Who do we
It,
trust
it
more, Microsoft or Google?
okay.
This is the kind of
Right.
questions
Right.
that, or should we trust non-private company and try to have like a government
And
regulated
I
thing? Do we trust the government to do such thing? Should it
Yeah, do
be
we
an
trust the
NGO?
government to do that? Right. And I guess that goes towards like data management also, and data
Yeah,
privacy, right? Because like when we talk about AI, it's like it needs big data to fuel it. Like without big data, like what are we gonna do with AI? And I mean, a lot of the fears come from that too. It's like there's so much data on us out there already,
yeah,
right? Like from the banks, like financial. Every time we buy something, Amazon has like all these the information, Facebook, and it's true. It goes down to, okay, do I trust Facebook? And let's say you say I don't anymore. Should I get off it? And yeah, that's interesting. It's actually trusting companies and each other.
yeah.
Talking about the teams though that develop it, in one of our talks we discussed like diversity, and you mentioned this in one of your talks too, about like who is developing the AI. So how, like, do diverse teams really help reduce bias when it comes to AI and development of AI?
I mean, there's this thing with empathy, right? Like, there are people who are more empathic than others naturally, and also people who have had more empathic parents or more empathic teaching, or that in general empathy was something in their
Mm-hmm.
lives, right? And there are people who don't. And there's also people for which empathy is considered a weakness, right? Like, so it depends a lot on the culture. Like, for some cultures, to be kind towards your neighbor and to say hello, you see it in Spain, right? Like when you are in Spain and you go
Hmm.
inside any restaurant, you always say like, ah, hola, buenas.
Yeah, everyone greets
Yeah, and
everyone.
then when you go out, it's like, ah, buen provecho, hasta luego. Like you always say goodbye, you know.
Yeah,
And some cultures don't say hello if they cross each other. Even if you look in the eyes, they wouldn't say anything to you. You know, like
yeah, that's how it is in Manila. It's just too many people and yeah, little trust
yeah.
between people. So
In Europe, it's very natural to talk to strangers randomly, right? Like you're ordering a beer
yeah,
and you talk to the person next to you. In Latin America, this would be unthinkable. It's like, why are you talking to me? Do you want to rob me? Do you want to rape me? What
yeah,
do you want to do to me? You know.
right.
So then, yeah, I think AI is just a mirror of all these cultural situations going on. So for some cultures, they have never been discriminated. You know, there are some men that have never been harassed or done anything. So it's very hard to have empathy with people who have, even if you try to, right?
Mm,
Like even if you try
yeah,
to imagine how it is to be in the subway and be all people looking at you and you're
yeah,
trying to cover yourself, or like, even if you try to imagine it, or you have a VR simulation of it,
it's different.
it's because it's your mind is completely different and your culture is completely different and you are a completely different person. So yeah, for up to some extent people are able to have empathy, but there are some parts of life where that one person will never have the same experience as another group of people. So I would focus on those differences, right? Like what are the very extreme parts of life where you cannot imagine how it feels unless you have actually gone through that, right? So then I think just with empathy training and with being more conscious about empathy, you can achieve 80%. But if you really want to go 100%, then it's definitely very important to include people who have actually lived these
Right.
things.
So I guess it will also depend on like what objective you have for whatever it is you're developing or whatever team, right? And then like what experiences would be valuable for like our goal, and then find people that have those experiences, because yeah, it's different when you've lived it, and I guess like that's valuable insight from people like that,
Yeah, because
right?
you don't know what you don't know. So if you have not lived it,
Mm-hmm.
you imagine how it would be from what you know, but maybe that's a good thing and a bad thing, right? Like if you're a good person, it would be very hard for you to think like an evil person. So you wouldn't even imagine how an evil person would think. But then if you have had someone who has lived something done by an evil person, then you have this information that you yourself would never think that someone would even be capable of doing, right?
Right. Yeah. So yeah, you gotta test your products and services with a whole lot of different people to see how they use it, and then put the guards to make sure that it does like suit your goal and doesn't veer off
And
the
they don't
path,
have to be
right?
hired in your team. You can just run like a validation on people.
Mm,
Maybe you recruit them, offering them a gift card or a free subscription to your service for a month, or so you can offer
right.
them some kind of value just to test your service or product, and
Yeah.
you have a good amount of people.
And for AI, it's like I guess being conscious of that and constantly validating,
Definitely.
right? Just to be sure, because it is like a powerful technology. Okay, I want to end with um a last question. So in the past Shockwave talk that we had, like the future of work expert Wagner Denuzo said that like organizations that don't embrace technology will be left behind. And I mean, I agree. He was saying managing thousands of people is just unthinkable without the help of technology. But still, there are a lot of people that are overwhelmed by technology, or have like anxiety and fear towards technology. So what tips or what message do you have for those that are still fearful and like don't want to jump into using technology and AI?
Well, everything is moving really fast, and it can be overwhelming. Even for people who have been years in this, everything is going incredibly fast, and you have to read papers at a speed you never experienced before. Like everything is very, very fast.
You need like six eyeballs,
Yeah,
right?
and
With all the stuff you
you think
read.
one thing, and then the next day, something that you thought was going to happen in 3 months happened the next day. And yeah, it's crazy. Also, it depends a lot, like on there are key institutions in society, right? Like the universities, the government, the large corporates. So we depend a lot on the goodwill of all of these parts. Like we depend a lot on universities trying to update their programs faster, not update them every year or every 10 years like some universities do, but update them literally every semester, uh, which of course is a
Mm.
lot of work. And most universities would say it's crazy. There's no way we can update our curriculum every semester, but technology goes a lot faster. And if this is not done, what you study on software engineering today will be outdated in a year. So then universities have a lot of work there. Also, like just technical programs, diplomas, like not full 4 year things, but also like continuous education, and not even masters, like just having this diploma or boot camp or something that helps you achieve this. So you can, because if you are an employee, you need some kind of certification to say that you know this, right? So then
Right.
we need to create more diploma programs faster, so that you can go and say, hey, I have a training on using ChatGPT in finance. Imagine you're an accountant, so you go to a diploma program on how to use ChatGPT uh, for being an accountant, or for being a lawyer or for being a doctor. We need more short courses on how to use these
Shorter.
things. Also,
Yeah.
government regulation, but not at the point where they stop innovation, which is very hard to make
Hmm.
policy that allows
Yeah.
for
It's a
innovation.
fine line.
Yeah, but also protects the people from creating more inequality than we already have.
Mm.
And also large corporations to also throw bait and help startups to grow, because if if these large corporations that have access to thousands of GPUs and millions of data points keep everything to themselves, well, they will be 10 or 15 times richer than they are now in the next year. But who wants to live in a world where you own all of the money and you don't have anyone to sell to, right? Like or you're selling one option to everyone, and
Yourself.
everyone is forced. Yeah.
Sell to
So
yourself.
we depend a lot on the corporate leaders not to be narcissistic and say, okay, maybe I don't need to have all of the millions in the world. Maybe I can create a VC fund, like a venture fund to invest in startups that use my technology. Or maybe I should make education programs in the less developed countries, uh, even if it's to clean taxes, but find some way to be tractors to
Hmm.
pull everyone with all the resources that they have access to, right? It's not like let's make the rich less rich. It's like, okay, let's make the richer richer, but also to help all of the pyramid
Yeah.
to go
To
further.
reduce
Yeah,
inequality.
yeah,
I
to
mean,
reduce
yeah.
inequality.
To bring more people,
It's
yeah.
not it's not let's just
Social justice.
exactly not it's not let's all be more poor. Like, oh, so you're
Right.
rich,
Right. At the expense of.
yeah, it's like, oh, you're rich and I'm poor, and then you give me money and then we're all poor. No, it's like, yeah, let's make you richer, but let's also close the gap, and this
Right.
can be achieved by I mean, this is already starting. Like there are lots of companies releasing open source models
Mm.
and the weights and everything to help other people develop. But for example, some of the weights are not usable for commercial purposes. And this defeats
Mhm.
all of the purpose because then people have to find hacks and ways to create products because they cannot sell something that is based on these large language models. And if they do, they have to put Microsoft or OpenAI as the supplier, and then they have this cost to consider, and then there are some more even for carbon efficiency. Like sometimes it's cheaper if you train a model on GPT-4 results, uh, and then this model is more carbon efficient and it's cheaper, and you can run offline and these things. But you cannot do that because you need to pay the API. You cannot use it offline. So
Right.
yeah, corporates can still make money by helping other people access maybe a lesser version of GPT or things like that. But this requires cooperation of all humanity. AI is not something that one person can solve, but it's something, as you said, it's the humanity's baby, and therefore it requires
Yeah.
all of the humanity's cooperation to be able to use it to make everyone richer and
I love the analogy with a baby because
happy.
there's like it takes a village, right? And it's like, yeah, it takes a village. And if we don't do it right,
Yeah,
it can be a catastrophe.
definitely.
But I mean, if we get together, it can actually solve a lot of the world's problems and help a lot of, the more impoverished and the people with less access to
It's similar
education.
to COVID. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead. We can
No.
extend a little bit and then I'm going to ask you like the final question. I said I
Okay.
have my last question, but I'll ask you a final question. Go ahead.
No, that is similar to what happened with COVID, right? Like COVID was a coordinated effort of all universities, hospitals, and states to
Right.
control the infection. And like there was a time where we were all in mask and all in our houses, but through coordinated effort, now we can fly
Mm.
again and meet each other again. And
Right.
it changed the world really drastically. A
Mhm.
lot of people lost their jobs, a lot of businesses closed, a lot of things got more expensive. The way we work changed completely, but through coordinated effort, we passed through it, and now we're here. So it's the same. Like it's just organizing the same way we already did with this infection to make AI better.
Yeah. Okay. Final question because I realized I have to ask this. So
Okay.
what's your final like a message to HR practitioners
Yeah.
and like why HR should jump into AI or use AI for good?
Because the title is human resources. So the most
Yeah,
important thing that should matter here is
that's a
humans
good one.
and resources. So then the thing is, the thing here is GPT can make humans better. Like this is the first time where if you don't know how to make an Excel sheet or an Excel formula, you don't need to spend 1 hour or two researching in Google how to do it. You can just ask, and it can even do it for you, right? Like write me a macro in Excel
Mhm.
to do this thing, or this I am having this error. How do I fix it? So I would uh, go for like train your people, like include AI in the training programs of your people in all of the departments, because if they know that they can do it, they will find better ways than you to do it. Like that's what happens when you're a teacher, right? Like you teach what you have experience and what you think of the world, and then your students have their own minds and their own context and their own research and their own interests, and find other ways that you couldn't even imagine or never thought that that could be done. And then with resources, AI also makes a lot of things cheaper, right? So there are lots of processes where you can automate using AI that can help you move very well trained people or retrain some group of people towards another more difficult task that the AI cannot achieve. So I think the faster you embrace AI and use it to retrain people and to like help people achieve things that were very hard before and move them towards more creative and where you really use their experience, because there's something AI doesn't have that they have, is experience, like real world experience and real world troubleshooting and problem solving, because you still have to guide GPT, right? So then we need to focus on the problem solving skills of humans and the creative side of humans and the problem detection side of humans, and just help them use AI to do the heavy lifting of everything.
Great. Thank you so much, Rick. Thank you for like our 45 minutes of reflection about AI and the world
Yeah,
and humanity. And I hope that we can have more of these discussions in the future. But
definitely.
thank you so much.